Welcome to Red Meat Update's Virtual Farm Tour for 2023. I'm Sarah Cole, Chair of the Working Group of Red Meat Updates. I'd like to thank Nutrient Ag Solutions for their sponsorship of the Virtual Farm Tour.
And I'm Rowan Smith, Working Group member. Steve, can you tell me a little bit about how the group got started?
When I first came from Victoria, John Bruce's dad was the Agricultural Department Extension Officer in Smithton, and he was running this beef group, which was paid for by the government, and it used to get a roll up of, 30, 40 people at a time. And we just go out and visit a farm, and one of the big things that in those days was teaching us rotational grazing, because the dairy industry was doing it, but it wasn't used in the beef industry. We did things like benchmarking and concentrating on profitability and production all the time. But numbers kept sliding as costs went up, and the difficulty of doing benchmarking, a lot of people didn't want to do it. So John Bruce and I then decided that we'd morph back to the old system where we did it ourselves and it was free to come, but we still had a focus farm and we'd get a focus speaker like Basil Doonan or someone.
I think I'd like to mention is that particularly back in that period when the beef prices were rock bottom, things were difficult. We were all working away on our own farm, seeing no one much from day to day. We actually had meetings then just to get together.
Yeah.
And that was quite beneficial, because you see that you weren't the only one doing it tough. You could probably support each other to a certain extent, and who knows, that day may come again, and that would be one of the really important things of keeping a group like this going.
Seems to me like the social part is as much about it as what the training and the learning.
And that
aspects.
was something John Bruce was very strong on. That we weren't getting together when we dropped the benchmarking, or even with the benchmarking, we weren't getting the number of people together.
Yeah.
And we started off the new group at his place with a barbecue at Martin. We probably got 40 people there.
Yeah.
Had a good evening.
So can you tell us a little bit about some of the benefits that you've got out of being involved in the group over the years?
With everything that we've learnt, whether it's rotational grazing or something else, you have to then put it into a practical situation on your own farm, and you've got to you can't do it totally theoretical. You've got to make it adapt to your own farm, and we've tried to do that. And I've always said that you go to these things, all right, you might hear a lot of things you've heard before, but it can be a pretty poor day if you don't learn something, whether it's reinforcing something you're doing or giving you another idea that perhaps you should think about and work out whether it's appropriate to do or not.
Yeah, one of the main benefits of the group is probably the fellowship, the group therapy side of the group. Discussing problems and issues, finding out that you're not the only one that's got that issue, and there's other people that have got the problem or have dealt with the problem in different ways. And so there's always value. I think every time we go to a beef discussion day, there's always something to be gained from it.
So there's a bit of succession really happening in the Circular Head Beef Group at the moment, with a few of the old heads taking a back seat and letting a few of the young guys step up. Stafford, can you tell me a bit about what you've learnt so far with being involved in the group?
I think for the first, the 6 years since I've probably been a part of it, Rowan, it's probably that low cost production, but also medium to high output. It's something that probably hasn't been stressed enough for anyone entering the beef industry about profitability, because as we've seen the volatility in the market in the last 6 months, is having a low cost of production so you still can make profit and keep the wheels turning. So that's probably the main benefit I've seen in sort of joining the beef group.
I guess it gets you out of the pattern of doing the same old day after day and thinking you're doing it right, and so you can see where others have taken a different step or a different approach, and you can apply that into your business. The social side is good.
What are some of the topics you think are going to be important for the group to kind of, tease out and cover off on over the next few years?
There's the obvious ones with climate change and and where we sit in that going forward. But there's also the cost production, the ones that are always there.
Yeah, I certainly think that environmental space is very, it has to be at the forefront, not only of this group, but the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Because if we're not, then I suppose the consumers, we want to really reinforce or establish where we want to go to in the future as an industry. We don't want to be told where we have to go. So carbon neutrality, whether it's from what we're seeing in New Zealand with a few different taxes coming in, although it would be difficult for our industry, but we do have to start planning towards that carbon neutrality by 2030, because I think it's an important space to be at the forefront.
How important is it for you to be able to get off farm for half a day at a time and just catch up with others in the industry?
Yeah, it's definitely important, and with cattle prices coming down and things obviously getting a bit tougher, it's going to get more important.
I guess in this particular region we're pretty lucky. We have a pretty good community anyway, but
Yeah.
These things certainly help. You come across people that you might not associate with elsewhere as much, and so it brings everyone together.
Yeah.
We're probably quite lucky being in a high rainfall area of Circular Head, but I think to really test the waters, we need to have a look at other systems, whether it's in the same rainfall or geographic location, or meeting a few at bull sales here last week and talking with the Flinders Island beef group. They're excited about probably learning off us and vice versa off them, so we need to really test that a bit more because we've all got something to learn and something to offer.
This year we'll be visiting 2 farms in the Circular Head region, one here at Western Plains and another at Pilkington Pastoral at Redpa.
Thanks John and Ian for having us at Western Plains.
No problem.
It's quite a magnificent spot to film the virtual farm tour. Just wondered if you wanted to start with telling us a bit about your operation.
We started here, Dad bought the original part of the farm in 1975, and we're now at 1,540 odd acres.
So Ian, would you like to just tell us a bit more about your production system and how things operate?
Sure. So we breeder finishers. So we've got 350 odd breeding cows down on the bottom farm, and we bring it's a self-replacing herd, and we bring all the progeny through to either become part of the breeding herd or to be finished, and then we also buy in a similar number of young stock to finish as well. So we finish around 500 young stock a year into Greenhams, pretty well all going, large majority going at the end of September and that winter contract to help fill a production gap in there for given we're so fortunate to be out here on this coastal environment where it's nice and warm in the winter, and also we do sell some this time of year or late autumn, just before winter, but the majority of them are at the end of winter. In terms of our stocking rates and things, we sit right now today at the end of April we're at 22 DC to the hectare. That'll sort of ramp up through winter. By the time we get to the end of winter it'll be about 27, 28, and then we get into our selling period, and by the time end of spring comes we're down to about 23, 24 DC to the hectare, and then it sort of plateaus down to that 22 through summer, and then back to where we are today.
Ian, can you tell us a little bit how the feed base differs from what is down on the breeding country compared to up here on more the finishing country?
Yeah, sure. So that block down there, on the peninsula down there, is the main lava flow out of the extinct volcano that is the Nut. And so it's quite stony down there.
Yeah.
So the pastures down there are extremely perennial pastures. They're over 100 years old, older than that, some of them.
Yeah.
It was grassland when Tasmania was basically settled, I suppose. So we use that for our breeding cows. They utilise that pasture really well. It's older style cocksfoots and ryegrasses mainly. It's got clovers and things in it, nothing that we've ever sown. Whereas up here, this country has been used for cropping in the past, and so being red ferrocile soil, a lot of it has less rocks, it's been cultivated, so we have got perennial pastures up here that are more improved species, I guess, still cocksfoots, ryegrasses, and legumes and things. We're using the cocksfoot for more production
Yeah.
as well as persistency. We think we can get, given we're nice and winter warm, we can get pretty good production out of it through the winter as well as that persistency. Yeah, we like to have good legume content in our mix, obviously for a nice mixed diet for the animals. So we've got several legumes, there's some herbs and things that sort of more naturally grow than are sown, as well as our mix of grasses we use. Like I said, cocksfoot and ryegrass. We've also got prairie grass in there as well. Quite a lot of prairie grass on our property. It's been there, my grandfather was one that sort of pioneered, well not pioneered, but really pushed prairie grass for its winter growth and palatability. We're using red clover, a lot of red clover. We've got a strong background white clover content, and then we use lucerne as well in our pasture mixes, but also as a more lucerne dominant stand with sort of a 50% lucerne grass mix, so we get a lucerne dominant pasture in summer and a grass dominant pasture in winter in the same paddock.
So how's the introduction of irrigation helped you conserve that fodder and improve your productivity there?
Yeah, I'd say it's been about 7 or 8 years since we've had irrigation, and to fill that summer feed gap we were using dryland lucerne before we started that, and that was really helping, and we're still doing that, but we've added irrigation. Only about 10% of the property can be irrigated. It's not a large amount, but that's really helped us step up our growth rates on some of these two steer mobs that we've got up here through summer.
We've just come out of a squall here, and it is pretty windy. Does that end up being a constraint on productivity, or is there other environmental factors that you think perhaps reduce productivity at all up here, or is it good every day?
Well, it's kind of you know, we do get a windy. It's a very windy area. Like it's Circle Head's the windiest place in Australia probably, but. The wind's quite warm. It comes off the ocean. The sea ranges from 23 in the summer to about 9.5 in the winter. So most of the wind's coming off from warm ocean. So frost, we don't get frost here. And even though, you know, we've got shelter belts in some parts of the farm, but on the windiest day going, you'll see cattle just sitting out in the middle of the paddock. You don't use them, you know, very often. So we're pretty lucky. Soils are quite free draining. So we're not high rainfall. We're 32 inches, 810 mils. We've got the rainfall records from 1868, and it's been 32 inches the whole time from 1868. So you know, it's probably doesn't really matter how much rain you get, it's how you get it, and those regular little squalls like we had just a minute ago are what makes pasture grow well throughout the years.
We use AgriWeb for most of our farm management type stuff. We use the Be in the Enable Ag program for a bit over a year now, and we use that for our task management, our people management, our visitors, contractors, all sorts of things. It's been really good. It helps with biosecurity as well, and I mean, we're really lucky we've got my sister and her husband are both vets here locally, so our biosecurity plans, and we get whipped into line pretty well by my sister, so we're really lucky there. Yeah, so all those things, the better the systems, I find the easier it is to run into an audit confident and be able to find things that they require nice and easy. We've just finished piloting the Greenham's new sustainability standard, which is finished up, and we were really happy to be part of that, help develop that. We've signed up for the environmental credentials one that's coming up soon, and yeah, there'll be another one or two here or there, I'm sure. But I mean, it's great to be involved in pilots, or just being, you know, involved early in some of these programs to be able to, I guess, help guide the suitability, but also to stay on top of things as they change.
So John and Ian, we've had a lot of fun this morning filming the virtual farm tour. You obviously both get along very well. I just wondered if you would like to expand on the people involved in the business, the family dynamics, and then we might touch a little bit on succession planning and how that's been.
Yeah, well, we're a family business, obviously, so Dad bought the original part of this farm in 1975, and we expanded that a few times, added a few blocks to it since then, and Ian came home from his agronomy job about 6 years ago, and he's been an asset to the business as well. And of course, we're a bit lucky having my daughter and her husband are both vets, so I don't have to think very often.
That's excellent.
That's been very good.
Yeah.
No, we combine pretty well as far as that goes. We have a few arguments, occasional different disagreements.
Yeah.
You know, that's normal. But we're pretty happy with the way things have turned out.
You're still evolving, no doubt, but did you get any professional help at sort of when you started thinking about succession, or it just evolved from the start?
Yeah, so we had some experience with a couple of professional facilitators, but in the end, I think the families, we've been having sort of regular business meetings with all the family. My mum was involved with that as well, and the daughter and the husband as well. And so we've sort of developed a succession plan that we all agree on at the moment. And, but yeah, that's a fluid thing. It can change all the time.
So John, you have 3 beautiful grandchildren, and 2 of those are yours. Is the journey that you've had on your succession with your father, does it bring anything that makes you think about planning for your children in the next stage?
For sure. I guess probably 2 parts to that. At the moment we are in the throes of restructuring the way our business is, I guess, run, or the structure of our business, and to try and help us get a more streamlined succession through generations, not just the one we're going through currently, but in the future. But then also, yeah, for sure, Jane and I have got a pretty strong focus on making sure we look to invest some of our personal funds off farm as we, it's only a small amount to start with, but if we're starting as early as we can, we try and build in case we have 1 or 2 of our kids that are not keen to stay at the farm, or they both are, or however it might work out. We're trying to build an asset outside of the farm at this stage. So
with the transition and the development of the succession plan as such, there would have been some difficult moments, no doubt. Were there some really hard?
It's the difference between being fair and being equal is one that you've got to navigate in succession. That's probably the hardest thing to work out, is for all the people involved, how to be fair to everybody. It's not necessarily going to be equal, but fair is necessary.
Thank you so much, John and Ian, for having us at Western Plains today for the virtual farm tour. We've really enjoyed learning more about your business and seeing a spectacular place to farm, and I can just see what a great job you're doing and been very successful. Thanks so much, Steve, Andrew and David, for having us today at Pilkington Pastoral. We're standing at Kalara. Really interested to hear about your business and your operation today, and how it started and what involvement you all have in it.
Well, it started about 1982 when I turned up at an auction and bought this block of land. And our family moved over in 85. My wife Laurie and Kelly and Dave and Andrew were born then. David's the only real Tasmanian here. And we've developed it on a shoestring really up until the last 5 or 6 years when we've been able to start redeveloping it again. There's three blocks here which were purchased. This one was purchased at auction and the other 3 shortly afterwards, 10 years ago.
350 acres up on the Harkers River Road, Montague, and then about 5 years ago we brought another development block. So we've got about 600 acres up there now.
Yep. So how many hectares in total are you running now?
4,200 acres.
So we're standing here in a bit of drizzle. What's your climate? What's your rainfall and soil types and climate?
No one ever counts it after July. And then when it gets dry, we start looking at it again.
How many head are you running now?
So we run a self-replacing herd of 1,150 breeding cows, and then we keep all their progeny onto about 450 kilos, and then either sell them off to the meatworks or sell them to other fatteners.
So what's your joining program and?
So we're spring calvers. We calve in August, and we join for 8 weeks in our cows and 6 weeks in our heifers. Do an AI program on our heifers.
Where do you see the potential in the country at the moment? You were talking about a lot of redevelopment work in your pastures that haven't sort of been improved since the initial establishment of the farm.
Well, I think there's probably, what we haven't redeveloped, there's probably a 30% improvement, possible improvement.
Yeah, we can pretty much go over everything and improve it, and that gives us the opportunity to increase our stocking rate once we do that.
And that's probably the preferred option rather than clearing anymore.
I'm a conservationist in the family, but we don't want to. We want to leave pretty much what we've got as shelter belts, but we will look at opportunities to buy more land, and then we can build the breeding herd here and put more, have somewhere to put our cattle like we do at Montague. One of the things with our redevelopment program, we're going back to the original development, we only used 1 tonne of dolomite on the surface, and so in dry seasons the roots didn't go down deep, and our redevelopment program now is we're putting on 4 tonne to the acre, and burying it down so that I think we're finding in drier times grass is hanging on longer.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process that you've gone through to get to this stage in this new pasture?
Yeah, so when we're redeveloping, part of it is the drainage, and where it's been waterlogged for 30 years and unproductive, we've decided to go in and hump and hollow the bits that need it so we can make that as productive as the rest of it. So this country here was done just really roughly 40 years ago now, and growing sags on it as big as us.
Yeah.
And this wide, so we spray them all out, disc it, rotary hoe it, hump and hollow where we need to, come through, and then we just broadcast over the top. And then last year we just did our traditional mix over there, which was just ryegrass clover, or just sub-clover, but doing trials with Tia, we've added a few more legumes into it. So we've got red clover, white clover, strawberry clover, and chicory, and then just a bit of ryegrass.
And so there's a couple of years worth here. We've kind of got the, recently sown about a month ago.
Yeah.
And then just back behind us, we've got another block there that's about 12 months of age. What do you see in that 12-month pasture that you like the look of?
Just how it holds on during summer, and then you're back on it like it's back growing way earlier than the old stuff. So yeah, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Is there anything? I mean, you guys have tried a lot of different things over the years. And you've learned a lot. Is there anything you wouldn't touch again? Anything that just hasn't worked for you that you'd like to share?
We have done rate crops and stuff, but that sort of just doesn't suit our program very much, because growing, if you're doing a small area, getting the cattle on it, getting them suited to eating it, and then trying to get it back in grassing time in the spring. So we're just doing it the autumn.
Some of the earlier renovations we didn't spray out, so that and eventually just went back to what it was with sags and everything. We just recently signed up to AgriWeb, and that was more because we've got an employee. It's just made life easier to teach him where everything is, but we're realising that it's handy for lots of things, record keeping mainly. Like when you spread fertiliser and stuff, you can just log on and you've got a history there.
Withholding and things like that as well.
Yeah, we're in all the quality assured GAP program, so having all that sitting in there will be handy for our audit.
Yeah, well, being in the GAP program, you're audited every year, so it's usually a mad rush, like a couple of days before to get all your paperwork in line, but hopefully now with this we'll have it all under control.
Just touching on succession, I mentioned earlier at the previous property that it's always seen as succession planning to be an event and one document. have you touched on succession and have a bit of a...
Well, I came home in 2004 and we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, it's a transition, is it? Yeah.
The boys both own 2 of the original blocks, and when we bought the country at Montague, they bought that in, well, that was bought in their name. So this block we're sitting on now is the only one I own, but they do owe Laurie and I a mortgage on, it wasn't given to them.
There's been open dialogue the whole way of what's happening.
How do you all work together? Do you well, I'm sure, but do you have different areas that you manage yourselves, or it all works as one?
Well, Andrew's in charge of livestock and David's sort of business, but they're both
very broad.
Yeah, they both are capable of stepping in each other's footsteps. There's no real boss, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm definitely becoming the boy and phasing out. So I'm consulted on what's happening, and I give my opinion, but it's the boys are now taking most of the decisions, certainly on selling cattle, and if we buy more land, it'll be up to them to decide if we do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your property and your business with us today. It's been very interesting, and it's a beautiful spot, and you've obviously done a lot of development, and congratulations on how far you've come, and thanks so much for having us.